Coogs house. The over-under on the football season win total was set at 5.5, but Houston is 3-0, halfway there, halfway to bowl season, where the Houston Cougars look to get those wins and beat the odds this season.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to step by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Be sure to make your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. You want to join the conversation, but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below every day that you are. When you go bowling, do you spin it? Can you spin it? Are you good at spinning it? Anyway, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We got more on that fun later, but right now doing great deals as football season has kicked off and get you in on the action over there. I want to talk about the prospect of bowling and getting over that 5.5 win total mark in the first segment. I also want to spend some of the second segment talking about All-American awards being handed out for the Hoops program already. And last but not least, we'll give some updates on Houston recruiting news on the basketball front as well. It is a bye week in football season, so we got to fill in some of those holes while we've got the time and breath to do so. But before we get into all the Hoops action in the latter two-thirds of the episode, bowl season. Houston, if they win 6 games, will be eligible to play in a bowl game for the first time since joining the Big 12. That seems rather important, to say the least. And listen, I think the big deal here is Houston's 3-0, and we talked all summer and offseason about how this was a real possibility. The schedule sets up really nice for Houston. They went from one of the most difficult schedules based on previous seasons' win-loss percentage last year to one of the easier schedules based on the same metric this year. And while the metric is not perfect, it does shape up for a kind of boosted feeling in the rebuild. I would also point out the program is a lot better spot. They're doing things better as well. And so you're sitting here at 3-0 after beating Coach Prime and Deion Sanders' crew last week. And you're thinking, okay, you got to get 3 wins to get bowl eligible. You've got, honestly, a handful of games to look at. You got a bye week. What can you start to circle? Now, I will say, as I said yesterday on the Hoops preview episode I did with Andy Padden for the Locked On College Basketball channel, I heard a sports psychologist say one time, and it kind of stuck with me. If I hand an athlete their schedule and say, okay, what do you think you're going to go? And they say, oh, I think we'll be 10-2. Hand them their schedule and say, which games do you plan on losing? And they'll probably look at you funny. But the truth is, the athletes, coach, etc., aren't going to want to circle any that they plan on losing. That's not how things go. And I frankly think most fans think the same way. I think that's totally fair and valid. I don't want to go into this exercise acting like there's a bunch of games I'm planning on losing as the Houston Cougars, right? That's certainly not the case. However, there are certainly some games I think you got to go get them because they're the easier ones to get. Is that a thing? We'll call that a thing. And I look at this first one, frankly, out of the bye week. Houston plays Oregon State as a game that Houston needs to win. Oregon State is winless thus far. They play Oregon this weekend, and that doesn't look like it's going to go any better for them. Quarterback Malik Murphy has 6 touchdowns and 5 interceptions thrown. That was by 19 to Cal, 31 to Tech. And who knows what Oregon does to them this weekend. Honestly, it feels mean to say, but it doesn't feel like just winning that game, even on the road in Corvallis, a couple time zones away across the country. It doesn't feel like that's enough. It feels like this almost need to be a moment for Houston to allow the second half against Colorado, second half against Rice, kind of put it on somebody and really kind of showcase this program and what this program has become, right? I think where we're at in the program, the guys deserve that shine, and they kind of need that shine. Now, that would be 1 win that gets you to 4 wins and 4-0. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's been a decade. We're talking back to the H-Town takeover days since Houston started off that kind of hot, right? And so we're looking at a real special thing in our midst here. Another game I think they got to go if you're going in order here is Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is a program that appears to be kind of spiraling. They didn't just kind of lose to Oregon. They lost to Oregon in a way that they scored just 3 points, lost by over 60 points. It feels like an FCS kind of score. Oregon is a dynamic team, a great team, going to be a playoff team, all that kind of stuff. Sure. But the difference in that game legitimately looked like they were not in the same league, sometimes not even playing the same sport. Oklahoma State spiraling. Quarterback Haas Haney has been injured. Zane Flores has 2 picks and no touchdown passes, and he runs it okay, I guess, but has no rushing touchdowns either. And I say all that to say that while we are still early, it does feel like, regardless of what you think about them, had Haas Haney been healthy enough to play, Houston's going to catch Oklahoma State in a spot where the roster indicates, even as good as Caleb Hicks is as a running back, Houston should have a lot of advantages. And on the coaching staff side of things, you know, I'm hoping that Houston catches them in a weird spot because it makes the game easier. But Houston could also be that weird spot. They play Tulsa, Baylor, and at Arizona. And this is kind of Gundy's last chance to save the program he built himself. And so are you the program that kind of puts that nail in the coffin? Or does it happen the week before at Arizona? So you're going to be playing against a program that's kind of on those last legs. The desperation could propel them, but it could also sink them, and it could be indicative of a program. I think Houston's got to win that Oklahoma State game. That would make them a 5-win program if no other games go their way. I think more will, but that'd be a 5-win program. They could officially, in this theoretical jump the shark at hosting Arizona. Arizona put the beat down in Houston last year, so I know that's not an easy one in a lot of ways. They also had a top 10 pick at receiver, so a little bit different program this year. Noah Fafita's had started strong, and he played pretty well against Houston last year. But you do get them at home. They've already played Iowa State and BYU in 2 of the 3 previous weeks. I think that's kind of a trappy feeling spot, even if they're feeling good about themselves. And if not, they may be questioning themselves a lot like Colorado was in that second half last week. That's a game that Houston's got to get. And then you also have West Virginia and UCF in back-to-back weeks. West Virginia at home, at UCF in Bounce House. Look, I think you got to go get both of those. I really do. West Virginia's in extreme rebuild mode, and yeah, they beat Pitt. Big win for the Big 12. For the worth, shout out to West Virginia. I'm not going to say what they were chanting all game because this is a family program. But West Virginia also lost to Ohio, not like Ohio State, like Ohio. And that's a MAC program, a good MAC program, but a MAC program. And Nico Marchiol has been okay. I don't know if I'd call him impressive, stronger runner and high percent completion, but easy throws. You get them at home, and maybe the roster is gelled by then, but also they've got like 80 transfers, and that depth gets tested, and a lot of the depth hasn't played Power 4 football. I think that's a game you got to get. They're just a different spot in the rebuild, and Richard may build it back. I don't think it's this year. I think you go get them. Central Florida, same kind of thing. I know that the Scott Frost refreezes or whatever they're saying over there, and they have to start off 2-0. And I want them to beat North Carolina this weekend. I think that's a game Houston and the Cougs can go get. And suddenly, I've already thrown out, those 5 would all make it 8 games for the Houston Cougars. So it's time to talk about bowls. What bowls can you look at? The Alamo Bowl, Pop-Tarts Bowl, Texas Bowl, Liberty Bowl, Rate Bowl, Independence Bowl would all be options with kind of Big 12 tie-ins, although the Independence Bowl is not technically a Big 12 bowl. The Armed Forces Bowl is a similar thing where they have no real tie-ins except they're going to have a service academy there. I say all of that to say, and I guess they usually have a service academy at the Armed Forces Bowl, it's not always, that the way this will work is the winner of the conference and I think maybe one other team could go to the college football playoff, and they'll just kind of start seeding things. So the number 2/3 team in the Big 12 will get to go to the Alamo Bowl. The number 3/4 team will get to go to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, the Texas Bowl, Liberty Bowl, Rate Bowl, and so on. That's kind of how they slot them. They're not in the same kind of pool thing that other conferences do all that often. And so as you see these wins accumulate, start looking at what bowl games that could be. Like the Pop-Tarts Bowl, you see an ACC school get to go eat Pop-Tarts in Florida. That all sounds good. That last year, Iowa State beat Miami in that game in one of the more fun bowl game atmospheres of the year. Cam Ward played just the first half, but Iowa State didn't win one for the Big 12. The Texas Bowl, I think, would be the most fun opponent because the Texas Bowl is a Big 12 versus SEC kind of thing. Last year's Baylor and LSU. LSU won that one a little handily, but It's also in Houston, and I would be interested to see if Houston pulled a veto card on that one, or if frankly the Texas Bowl said a veto card and said they didn't want a home field advantage kind of vibe there, just to get out and go see somewhere new. Really don't want to see the Liberty Bowl as far as seeing new places goes, because Houston's been to Memphis a lot in the last 15 years. However, I would point out that the last trip there was kind of fun. Remember the big comeback in 2022, and you get to play an SEC team. Last year it was Tech and Arkansas in that matchup. I think the SEC matchups will be fun for Houston fans because there's a lot of natural rivalries going back to Southwest Conference kind of days potentially happening there, or just the bragging rights for Big 12 and SEC things. Obviously, the Alamo Bowl is the biggest name here. The interesting thing about the Alamo Bowl is that is formally a Big 12 versus Pac-12 tie-in game. But because of the way that the Pac-12 dissolved, you could actually get two Big 12 schools in it. Last year, BYU and Colorado met in that game. BYU won handily. Colorado technically represented the Pac-12 now. So you can see like Houston get a rematch. They probably wouldn't do a rematch at Arizona State, but you could see Houston and Utah or Houston and BYU in that game. I guess not BYU because they're not the Pac-12 representative, but you get my drift here. You can see UCLA, I guess they're not good, so probably not them. USC, somebody that is bowl eligible from the Pac-12 formally making that one. So that could be fun. The Alamo Bowl is in San Antonio, so it's not home, but it feels like home. I don't know. Lots of fun options there. Lots of fun things going on. Speaking of fun things, it's fun to talk basketball on a bye week. I do want to talk about some news on the basketball front. Preseason All-Americans being awarded and what that outlook means for the Houston Cougars. Before we get too far, today's show is brought to you by Mazda, because Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Now listen, Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. Again, as a guy with a toddler that legitimately does drive a Mazda, I can tell you that came up when looking at rides and cars, and man, Mazda checks all of those boxes. You can feel the craftsmanship in every detail, metallic accents to Napa leather upholstery. It really makes a difference. Feels like you're riding in luxury at all times. Like Houston's players, we sweat every detail because we make every move count. Impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. It's almost weekend. It's midway through the week, heading that way. And if you look back, last week's MVP, who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it matters most. Let's break it down. I'm giving the DoorDash MVP to Connor Wigman. Delivered in a big way. Obviously, the play where he left the guy behind on his way to the end zone as he sprinted out of the pocket at full speed in a way that I don't think a lot of America was quite ready for. Really kind of a welcome to the club, welcome to the show kind of party for him. Looked really comfortable over the course of that game. No hesitations, no delays. If you've been following him all year long, you know the points wasn't a fluke, but it was kind of the next step in creating a streak. And just like Connor Wegman delivered for the Coogs, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash streaks. You can save every Saturday you order, stack it all up all season long. Save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Last through November 18th. Locked on Coogs here. Parker Ainsworth, and I am going to move into talking a little bit about basketball, as the Houston Cougars had a pair of Blue Ribbon College Yearbook Preseason All-Americans. Now, the Blue Ribbon College Yearbook is one of the first national publications every year to put out their preseason All-Americans and awards. Houston has two this year, and for what it's worth, Houston had two last year with LJ Cryer and Jawan Roberts. Also, both on this list. Marcus Sasser was a first-teamer on this list back in 2022 for the 2022-23 season. And I think it's interesting to see that a lot of times, I know Roberts didn't quite finish in the same kind of, in terms of a lot of the honors he did, but didn't quite finish what Cryer did at the end of the year. This is a pretty indicative list of who ends up being, assuming health and consistency, an All-American at the end of the year, right? This is a pretty strong indicator year over year. And I think what's interesting in looking at this is the two guys that they have this year, Emmanuel Sharp and JoJo Tugler, being nominated or being, I guess, recognized as preseason All-Americans, kind of directly replace the guys that were on this list last year, and LJ Cryer and Juwan Roberts. Now, I think Emmanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer feels like an even swap. Last year, Emmanuel Sharp averaged 12.6 points per game on 8.9 field goals attempted, but was the most outstanding player in the regional, was the most outstanding player in the Big 12 tournament, right? Was a very, very impactful player, impacted winning more than the 12.6 points per game, I think, details, right? The timing of his baskets was certainly part of that. The gut-wrenching way in which he would knock down that right corner three, or the right elbow three, I'm sorry, was important. You do lose Cryer's 12.5 field goals a game and his 15.7 points per game, but I think Sharp grows into that nicely. It almost becomes a direct flip-flop where he gets those shots, maybe one or two more shots, gets those points, maybe one or two more points, and someone replaces him. It kind of feels like a trickle-down effect in terms of Sharp replacing Cryer. They both are dynamic shooters. They do more than just shoot, but shoot the ball very well, obviously. Maybe undersized at the NBA level, but certainly not undersized at this level. I would almost argue that Sharp is a stronger defender than LJ Cryer. LJ grew a lot as defender at Houston. That's not to be a knock on him, especially considering the growth he made between his time at Baylor and his time at Houston. But Sharp is a very strong defender, and I think that helps his status on this list as well, and kind of moving into that role. Interestingly, JoJo Tugler, I don't think does the same kind of statistical swap or grows into the role of Juwan Roberts. I think he just gets better in his own role. And I think that's what's interesting here is like the same tit for tat, forward for forward move. You would think, okay, last year, Juwan Roberts had 10.5 points per game on 9 field goals and 6.5 rebounds. JoJo Tugler had 5.5 points per game on 4 field goal attempts and almost 6 rebounds per game. That seems like an easy, simple growth. And I bet from an offensive statistics perspective, JoJo Tugler does not get up to 9 shots per game unless it's a bunch of putback dunks, which would be sweet, frankly. I don't think that's his role. I think where you'll see is he'll probably snatch up those rebounds and maybe a little bit more. And you'll see a really high field goal percentage because it's a lot of layups and dunks. And you're going to see a guy that legitimately competes for Defensive Player of the Year, nationally Defensive Player of the Year. And I think that will be the defensive anchor kind of role he fills for one of America's best defenses year in and year out. I actually see the offensive production, those field goals and points, going to someone like Christian Eck. I see it going to Chase McCarty in small ball, Jacob McFarland being a little bit more offensively involved as a big man. I see those going to other spots in the forward room and center room. I don't see those, even Javier Francis, I don't see going to JoJo Tugler because bluntly, that's not what they need him to grow into. They just need him to be a consistent presence on defense. And I say it to say that he needs to play as many minutes as he can. The only gripe I've ever had about JoJo, obviously it'd be great if he shot free throws better, but whatever. The only real gripe I've ever had is like, I need you on the floor 40 minutes a game if possible. Like I need you on the floor with the energy, the motor, the length, the shot deterrence, let alone shot deflections. I need on the floor every single minute I can get. And honestly, there's been games where he's in foul trouble, and his over enthusiastic response to things will get him in foul trouble, get 2 or 3 in a quick short stretch, and then it's time to play JVR and J1 together. Well, now those 2 guys are gone, and the guys coming in behind JoJo are young. And so the biggest growth I think that happens for JoJo is knowing when to choose his spots for those moments. And that comes with growth and maturity, total faith in the staff. Casey Beard and Kellen Santa both work with the bigs, 4s and 5s, I guess 5s and 4s respectively. I think that you're going to see a lot of maturity in that way. And really, I mean, think about the impact he had last year as Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. If he played another 8 minutes a game, dear Lord, would people score? Could Houston pitch a shutout for nearly an entire half? I mean, it felt like they did for stretches of some important games in March and April. Does JoJo Tugler bring that kind of presence? Further, it begs the question, to be as good as you were last year, if Tugler's not going to pick up the offensive slack that Juwan Roberts had, it's got to come from someone else in that forward room. I think they're all capable. The question is just where. Because the truth is that Juwan Roberts, yes, 10.5 points per game, 9.1 field goals attempted. That's decent production. There's no way to cut that short. The timing, the settling nature of his 10.5 points per game, I think is more important. And I say that because honestly, I feel like when they need, teams getting a little racket, they need a go-to bucket. They threw it to Jawan on the block and said, "Go to work with the left-hand hook, buddy." Who's got that move? Is it Sinak? Right, as a dynamic and offensive player, can he do that as a freshman? Is it McFarland, who came in very highly touted? Is it McCarty and small ball? Where does that go? Right, where is that consistency? Is it somewhere else? Is it not a forward? Right? Is it not the hang your hat on play? Not a forward this year. Not a J1. I mean, you had J1 last. It feels like a decade. It's not quite a decade, but where does it go? And that I think is the bigger question. Not does JoJo do it, because I don't think that's what they need him to do. But we'll talk about more on all of that, I'm sure, throughout the preseason leading up to Houston Cougar basketball season. We're in a bye week of football season, though, and that means recruits are visiting campus. Basketball recruits, big-time basketball recruits. I want to talk about a little bit of that in 1 second. Before we get too far, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Monarch Money, because most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth. Look, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, you don't have the full picture. You can end up leaving money on the table. It's whether it's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool. Helps bring your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And as a history teacher, that sounds great. Listen, I said I teach, I coach, I podcast. Wife's got her sources of income too. All of our things needed a place to sit, settle, and be visual for us to see where we needed to put what and allocate what. Monarch Money does all of that on my phone. And it's really, really simple and easy to use. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. It's 50% off your first full year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Parker Andrew, the Locked On Coogs here. It is football bye week. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Houston recruiting situation as things are unfolding. Some big and good news this week for the Houston Cougars on that front. So I want to make sure we talk about that while we got a break from football games. The biggest story appears to be that Davion Adkins just came off a good visit over the weekend. Now, Davion Adkins is a 6'9", 4, a power forward that has some good offensive skills in his repertoire. Listed at 7'2" wingspan, I saw online. I don't know how official that is. I will say the dude's scratching his knee without bending over. He's got that kind of long arms, really high motor, good isolation scoring skills. He played at Oak Cliff Faith Family, and if you're not into the prep high school basketball scene in DFW's Metroplex, Oak Cliff Faith Family just recently got promoted to the Nike National Circuit, largely because of guys like Davion Adkins. Somewhat ironically, he's leaving Faith Family to go play at the perennial national contender Prolific Prep, which has moved to Florida. They used to be a California-based program. They now operate out of Florida, but Davion Adkins is going to go play there. Adkins came to Houston first on his string of visits, and all indications are that things went well. He'll also be visiting Kansas at the end of the month, and then Rutgers at the start of October. Houston being close to home, I think, is a big deal here for him. Haven't talked to him or his camp personally. Just feels like a fit from a lot of ways. He'll work directly with Kellen. Feels like a direct Chris Sinak replacement if Sinak were to go one and done and go pro, which he very likely he's projected to do on most draft boards, be a top 10 pick. And so I think there's a lot of natural fit there. Again, we see a 6'8", 6'9" guy long wingspan, high motor. Go ahead and say the Cougs are interested because he fits in right away. In a similar kind of vein, Bryson Howard continues to have Houston in his top group of schools. He's visiting Houston later this month. He's a top 20 player in the country. He's a perimeter wing guy, but kind of a longer wing guy that shot up recruit boards all summer long. Houston was in early with him. I don't want to say earliest with him, but as a DFW kid, Houston was pretty early on the scene. Bryson Howard, remember, we talked about him before, son of Josh Howard, played in the NBA for a long time. Josh Howard is now coaching at a small school up in DFW area. So Bryson Howard's going to school up there as well. He's already visited North Carolina Duke. I think it's worth noting there's an in-state kid. Bryson Howard's canceled his Texas visit. I mean, Houston's the program in the state of Texas that he's looking at. I think that's a good thing. Again, as I mentioned, Houston saw the kid play a lot over the summer, like multiple games per event they went to. They went and saw Bryson Howard play for Pro Skills of Nike EYBL Club. Already had an unofficial visit over the summer, just has that official visit later this fall. Again, feeling a good spot there. We'll see how things go. Arfan Gian, visiting Houston in October, also took a unofficial over the summer. He just came off of an Arkansas visit. He will see Kentucky later this month, and again, it's coming to Houston as on a visit in October. Another guy with a lot of contact with Houston. I mean, the coaching staff went and saw him in Iowa at the early part of one of the open periods. They saw the Iowa Colony, the Iowa Prospects, or they call that team out of Iowa, the top Adidas team. They saw them play a lot in the Adidas circuit. Arfan Gian is a true 7-footer with incredible touch and skill. And him being a Houston Cougar would be kind of I'm coming there to work on where my biggest deficiencies are. He's a big, big guy. And I think he and Bishop and Beard would combine to make a legitimate, like, Jokic type of player. I mean, like, the guy's got great vision, great touch, great skill. He dribbles well. He shoots it well, frankly. Getting him in Coach Allen Bishop kind of shape with Houston Cougars defensive intensity. He's a 2-year guy, a 3-year guy. He's also an all-NBA kind of guy if he gets in that kind of shape and with that frame. Really, really impressive guy. And I think that's probably one of the reasons Houston's remained so high on his list. Speaking of guys that are high on their list, Ralph Scott, 6'8" wing, visited Houston recently. He's also visited Tennessee, Purdue, Texas A&M. Crazy couple weeks for him. This dude shot up rankings over the summer on the Adidas circuit with Jamal Shed Elite. Kind of sneaky with Jamal Shed Elite too. He's an IMG Academy guy at first. He's now transferred. Ralph Scott is in the mix as well. I don't know that I feel as confident there, but I don't think it's because Houston's not interested. He's a really good fit in a lot of ways as a big, long wing. Speaking of big, long wings, all right, let's talk about the elephant in the room here. On Tuesday, Aziz Olajuwon put out his top 4. That say that if you're out of the high school recruiting loop, kids will kind of cut down their lists. And Aziz Olajuwon put out a top 4. His top 4 include the University of Houston. And immediately, I think other programs, Cincinnati's on the list, and Vanderbilt and Stanford, I believe, are the 4. And people are like, okay, if anyone beats Houston now, it's crazy. Everyone is assuming he's going to be a Houston Cougar. And he is a fit. He is a defensive-minded, long, rangy wing player. He'll spend a few years in college developing his game and is already high intensity, high motor, high everything. And that's all true. That is all valid. He also has name Olajuwon, and his jersey, I mean, kind of quite literally, his father's jersey is hanging in the rafters. And his jersey is going to kind of be a hot commodity. Olajuwon for the Houston Cougars is a big deal. I have talked before, and I'll say it again. I hope if he were to commit to Houston, Houston fans would be reasonable. Aziz is a really, really good basketball player. He is a guy that will make an impact on whatever program he chooses. And for that reason, I hope it's Houston because I want that impact to be with the Houston Cougars. He's a local kid. Obviously, his father is one of the greatest players of all time. I don't want people to expect or anticipate. I mean, let's be honest. Michael Jeffrey Jordan's kids were not Michael Jeffrey Jordan. I have advocated for LeBron James thing in the NBA. I'm like, hey, there's nepotism all over that league. Why is it a big deal if it happens to LeBron? Whatever, right? Bronny is not LeBron, right? Kean Anthony is not Carmelo Anthony. Aziz Olajuwon is going to be really good for whatever program he is. I just hope that fans, stands online, everywhere understand that he's going to grow and develop into Aziz Olajuwon, which is going to be a really good player. And Aziz is Aziz, and Hakeem is Hakeem, and those are different guys. And I want Aziz to be a Houston Cougar because I think Aziz is going to be a really good player, not because I expect him to become Hakeem, right? And I think that as long as we approach things with that mindset, it would be a great fit, man. It'd be a great fit. I also get the nerves about that, right? Like if someone wants to kind of go carve out their own way, I don't think anyone would fault him for that. He said, "Hey, I just want to go to Vanderbilt and do my own thing. I don't want to. I don't want to see my dad's name everywhere all the time. I want to go kind of get away for a second." Like, who could fault a guy for that? Who could fault a guy for that if that was the ultimate decision? So we'll see where things go, but things feel good, and so the recruiting trail is hot. Things are going well. We got more on that this week. We're going to kind of turn back to football later as well in the week. So keep an eye on Locked On Coogs. Hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live. Locked On Coogs, Premier, Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.